Hey YouTube, and welcome to the very first episode of Virtual History Tours. This channel is going to be dedicated to finding interesting historical sites and using Google Earth and old maps to do a virtual tour of what those sites look like today. And this episode is going to be the first settlers of the area of Lake Maspenock. Lake Maspenock is situated in the towns of Hopkinton, Upton, and Milford, Massachusetts. And the border of the town is right here where the area that we're going to be talking about. And in the southern area of this lake was the very first settlers that came. This part of the area was part of Mendon, Massachusetts at the time. Milford was split off from Mendon years later. And at the time, the first settlers of this area called it Bungay. And the swampy area down in back of the dam was called Bungay. And according to Wikipedia, the origin of the name Bungay is thought to derive from the Anglo-Saxon title Bunica Hay, signifying the land belonging to the tribe of Bona, a Saxon chieftain. Due to its high position, protected by the River Waveney and marshes, the site was a good defensive position and attracted settlers from early times. So, just wondering, this swampy, marshy area being called Bungay, and these are English settlers, uh, it kind of adds some significance to that. Now, the first area where these people settled was in the vicinity of Camp Street, Reservoir Road, and right in this vicinity is where the first mills were located. And according to Aidan Ballew's History of Milford, two small manufactories of cotton and woolen goods had been started in town. One in Bungay, so called, by Ebenezer Hunt, as early perhaps as 1827. So I have an 1827 map that I found in the Milford Historical Society, and I'm going to just pop that on top of the Google Earth imagery, satellite imagery here, and we can take a look at the area we're talking about. And at the time, Lake Maspenock was called North Pond, and the reason it was called North Pond is because it's in the north part of Milford and Mendon. So um, it was a much smaller lake. A dam was added later on that rose the lake to its level that it is now. But at this time, this small pond was dammed, and it did have a woolen factory here. And let's just jump into Street View here and take a look at the area and see what it looks like now. I'm on April of 2018 for imagery, so that we're not looking at a lot of trees and stuff when we're trying to look for foundations. So this right here is the site of the woolen mill. And according to bicentennial book Upton, Massachusetts, 1735 to 1935, on page 33, we find some information. Before the town was incorporated, many homes spun and wove cloth. Mothers, daughters, and children engaged in these home arts, which were necessities. So when Ebenezer Hunt set up his two sets of machinery and a dye house at the foot of the pond, he was changing the habits of many homes, but giving a steady employment to a considerable corps of workers, and bringing cash into circulation and benefiting the town. The yearly output was 31,200 yards of cloth valued at $15,600 in 1837. The burning of the mill in 1843 ended the weaving industry in town. So there really isn't much left of foundations or anything. We do see stuff here, but the mill was located here. It was dammed, and we can see from the map, if we jump out of Street View here and we look at the map, let's get it orientated north again. we can see that there were two residences here, E.B. Hunt, and I'm not sure if this is part of the Partridge place or this is all part of Hunt's. Maybe his brother Lowell lived in this property, but we'll take a look at that. And we're also going to take a look at this Aaron Partridge place, which actually Aaron Partridge was the second owner of this place. The first owner, I think, was the original settler down here. And we're going to go in a little deeper on that as well. So let's take a look at what it looks like today at the intersection of Camp and Reservoir Roads. This is where the Hunt family had their houses. And so this is the houses on the corner, this corner, this corner. I think they're newer homes. They have poured foundations. And the Hunt brothers' properties perhaps were even a little further back here, because when I look at the map, it seems like they're set back further on the property. They may perhaps even be these houses instead. See if these look a little bit older. Not really. So this one maybe, not sure. But in any event, this is where the original settlers had their mills, and this was an important part of town, bringing employment and income to the area's residents. Now, the original cart road coming into here is called Camp Street, and we have some information on Camp Street from Aidan Ballew's history. He says that Camp Street was a cart road that was widened and improved about 1756. And 4 years later, Joseph Cody built his homestead here under the power lines off of Camp Street. Before Camp Street was widened, Ballew says it was long ago a proprietor's path. So who could these proprietors be? The Hunt family, or it could also be the Taft family of Upton, one of their original settlers. And we're going to take a look at the Taft family and a grain mill that they operated up in this vicinity. And what's really neat about Camp Street is you can really get an idea of what it was back in the 1750s, because it really never continued as a road past here. This is all Milford conservation land, and once you get across the river here at this vicinity, this becomes Taft Street in Upton, named for the Taft family who settled all of this area up in here. And we're going to take a look at a map from 1798 of Upton. This was done by the Upton Historical Society, and I'm going to drop that other map off of the view. And what we have here is Robert and Solomon Taft. Robert was the original settler. Solomon was his son. And we can see Daniel Hunt, NR, refers to a non-resident. So Daniel Hunt owned this property in 1798. And I'm guessing it's his sons or maybe even grandsons who opened that first mill that we referred to earlier. So this is the Hunt property. But Robert and Solomon Taft retained a piece of property up here for some reason. And I think looking at the geography of the area and looking at the map of where the old mills were, which I have from 1831 in Upton. This is another hand-drawn map. Not quite sure where I found this one, to be honest, but this map shows the woolen factory, the Hunt woolen factory, but over here it also shows a grain mill. And this is on the Upton side of the river on the Taft property, and it's showing a mill pond here. So let's knock the map off and take a look. And sure enough, This area really looks like it was once holding water and a pond, and the mill itself looks like it was right around where the Mill River does its turn here. And if we look a little closer, really the river takes the turn over here. So somewhere in this vicinity, I believe, is where the old Taft grain mill was. There is no information on this at all that I've been able to find, other than that one snippet of that map. But looking at it, looking at the maps from 1798 and seeing who owned this piece of property, Robert and Solomon Taft. Robert and Solomon Taft, they kept this. Well, why would they keep that? Well, if you take a look at this, I call this the giant's footprint. This looks like it had also retained water at one time. And I'm not sure, maybe the Taft family had this dammed off, but if you follow this little stream downward, you're going to find that it feeds right into where this grain mill was also. Oh. Okay, so this is the Mill River, and this is the stream that comes down from the giant's footprint. So I'm thinking perhaps that's why they kept that piece of land, to give them a greater headwater for their grain mill that they were operating. All of the Taft property, the sons of Robert Taft, all settled in this area. And we can see here how many Taft family members lived in this vicinity. And all of these stone walls are all still existing. You can see their fields, and I'm sure they had a lot of grain fields that they utilized this grain mill to mill it. So it would only make sense. Don't have a lot of information. There's some information on Upton Mills, but nothing about Robert Taft or Solomon Taft running a grain mill here. But evidently, they did. So looking a little closer at the Taft family and their property, there's some interesting things going on here as well. I've noted this place right here because this is along the conservation land, and that house is going to be just a foundation. And I'd like to take a look in that vicinity and see what we can find. You can see the stone walls for the road here, and I'd like to get in there someday on a hike and see if we can check these coordinates and see what we find. But there's definitely an old foundation, cellar hole, probably a well. This is the original Taft settler. It really doesn't begin as a real road until you get to right in this vicinity here. And what's interesting, if we drop that map back on here, it looks like East Street actually ran to here. We've got Matthew and Eli Taft, and it ran through Ebenezer Walker's place here and Hezekiah Rockwood's place here on East Street. But East Street didn't continue to this portion of it until sometime later. So this whole portion of the road has been lost to history. Let's take a look. Is it there? Well, it's a little difficult to see. I'm on the 4/2018 imagery. Here we can see the road. Here we see the road. Once we get under the power lines and the brush is cleared out, it's a lot easier. And that road would have continued down this way. We can kind of still see it carrying along. And when it gets down to here, this is where this intersection, and the reason this house is set back so far is it used to be on the road here. If we take a look, right, very interesting. So this place was on this road that doesn't exist anymore. I've ATV'd up in this vicinity here and wondered, you can tell there was some roads going through here at one time, so that would explain it. So that house we can take a look at because there is street view. Oh yeah, center chimney. Not sure how old. I could look it up and reference it better if I wasn't so lazy, but beautiful example of one of the original settlers' homes here. So, in closing out this episode on the original settlers of the Lake Maspenock area and their mills, when the settlers first arrived, they arrived to a smaller pond. This is the approximate location of the original shoreline. Um, the Mill River was the primary source of power for these mills. E.B. Hunt built a woolen mill in 1827 in this location, and they lived at the intersection of Reservoir Road and Camp Street. Um, the first settler in that area of Camp Street was a man named Joseph Cody, and he moved here in 1760, shortly after the road was widened, or 4 years after the road was widened in 1754. The Taft family operated a grain mill further down, and they retained some property that I call the giant's footprint up here. It looks like it was wetland, and the stream ran down from there to their grain mill as well. So that's what we have for the history episode number 1. Thanks for visiting. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll catch you later.